question does the Rebbe raise regarding the fact that we get our das, the question that the Rebbe raises is that it's a yerida. We were better off getting it from the Eibusha directly. Remember, once upon a time, Kol Am Havaya Neviim, every single Jew was a prophet, and we negotiated down. We negotiated up. We asked for it l'chatchila. And once we got it, and we experienced the delightful effects of Kalei Nefesh 1 time, 2 times, whatever number of times it was, we came back to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, let's go back to plan A. So the Rebbe asked the question, it's a Yerida. Now, what's the answer? The answer is not, it's not a Yerida. The answer is, that's just the way it is. Look at question 220. Please write them down. Hello, I'm talking to you. Why is it this way that we get it through Moshe Rabbeinu? The answer is that we couldn't handle it. Pasha Kepshute, the Eibishter made us all Nevi'im. When we were all Nevi'im, we got our das directly from the Eibishter, but our neshamas floated out of our gufes, and we opted out. We said, let Moshe Rabbeinu be the Navi, and we'll be the Zhlobs. So the reality is, notwithstanding that it's a fact of Yerida, it's also a fact of life. We get our das through the Rebbe, through the Nasi Adar, through Moshe Rabbeinu. Like I told you yesterday, that I was asked by the boys from IU, why do you have to have a Rebbe? What's wrong with the Rosh Yeshiva? And the answer is, because the Rosh Yeshiva teaches you Torah, a Rav teaches you Halacha. A Rebbe connects your neshama with a lakus. A Rebbe is a neshama person. He's a spiritual person. It's a spiritual bonding. Huh?
That's how Hashem set it up?
That's how Hashem set it up, right. The Rebbe doesn't explain why it has to be this way. He just observes that it's a Yerida, and then he says, that's how it is. In other words, maybe in another Maimon he explains how it's advantageous, maybe. But in this Maimon he doesn't. He simply says that that's how it is. Question 221, which story in the Gemara regarding Purim did I compare it to? I compared it to the story of Kol Rabbi Shachlar Abzeda. That the Rabbi and Abzeda got together on Purim. And they drank wine. And Abzeda shechted Rabbi. I remember the Rebbe telling that Sikha, it's 40 years ago. I remember the Rebbe, the Sikha took an hour, 60 minutes. An hour of the Rebbe's talking is an extremely long time. If a Sikha was 20 minutes, it was a lot, because the Rebbe said so much. Because every single quote, every single line was another Gemara. But an hour was extremely long. 770 was so quiet when the Rebbe said that Sikha, there's no more copies. 770 was so quiet when the Rebbe said that Sikha. This is how I describe it. You could hear people listening. It was so interesting. It was delivered with such clarity. The Rebbe delivered it so well. You could literally hear people were on their toes. The Bachrim were on their tiptoes, and the men were sitting edge of their seat. It was the way we listened to the Sikha was such an important part of this story. The Rebbe in the middle told the story with the Majid Rebbe. And also the Majid Rebbe. That one of the Majid Rebbes, they were big tzaddikim. But their avodah was singing. They sang Nigun. They sang. It was a Majid Rebbe who needed an operation. But he was too old for the anesthetic. The anesthetic would kill him. So the Majid Rebbe said, I'll sing a nigun. When I'll go into the nigun and you'll see that I'm completely into the nigun, you could do the operation. And he started singing a nigun, and at some point they realized in the nigun, and they pushed it without anesthesia. They cut him open, they fixed his plumbing, they sewed him back up, and he sang his way through the surgery. He felt no pain. At least he didn't show any feeling of pain. So the Rebbe didn't say the Majid to the Rebbe. He says, when al derech zaz da meise von a gute Ried von friedlichen dort. He talked about from the malach and the bagel and butter, that story. So the Rebbe said there's also a story from a gute Yid, from a Polish Rebbe from the previous generation. And when the Rebbe said those words, as much as people were listening before, people leaned forward even more. It was an experience. The way that Sikha was taken by Anash was wow. So the Rebbe smiles and he says, "Mit der Telta Meise von a Polish gute Ried, haben sich alle aufgeschlafen." You tell a story about a Polish Chassidish Rebbe, everybody wakes up from their sleep. And 770 cracked up, the whole room laughed. Because the mood was, we were all so there with the Rebbe. So the Rebbe asked the question, Abzeda killed the Rebbe? Rabbi killed Abzeda? And the question is compounded. Comes the next Purim, Rabbi says, so what happened was he kills him. He shechted him. The next day, there's not enough copies. They were waiting for the copies to come in. It's a few minutes. The next day, the next year, Rabbi says to Abzeda, let's do it again. So there he says, no, once was enough. I'm not sure that every day a miracle is going to happen. So the Rebbe asked 100 questions on this story. And this story is asked by many Achrein, and the Rebbe quoted the Chassam Sefer and others. Better if you're going to read Stephen King, you got to be in the. We have Stephen King Row. This is called Stephen King Row. This is called Stephen King Row. When they fall asleep in the middle of Stephen King, I feel good. That's just me. They sleep through. We have Stephen King. If you want to slip, this is Stephen King. We have over here. It's another author, but this is Stephen King. All the Bacham will say to me every morning, Rabbi, you're boring. And they say it with, what do they call it? What's the name of his writing? Terror. What do they call his writing? What's his writing called? Dark fiction. Nobody knows what the expression is.
Horror?
What's the English word for his style of writing?
It's horror.
Horror. Yeah, this is the horror. This is the horror neighborhood. The horror neighborhood. Okay, we have different neighborhoods. Okay, some guys are actually listening to me. It happens once in a while. By mistake. They didn't mean it. It happened.
Tough competition.
Yeah, what can I tell you? It's like the Bacham cursing by mistake. Not a lot of, only on purpose, by mistake. Some Bacham listen to me by mistake. Anyway. So Rabbi shechts Rabbi Zayda. The next day he's resurrected, brings back from the dead, Mechaya Mesim, and he tells Rabbi Zayda the next day do it over again. So the Rebbe asked 100 questions. This story doesn't make any sense. And the Rebbe answered the question. The foundational point of the Rebbe was that the word shchita means to raise to a higher level. Ein v'shachat elu moshach. When you in the Gemara, shchita means to raise up, to lift up to a higher madreg. Because the concept of shchita is that you're taking an animal, which is in the animal kingdom, and you're going to kill him and eat his meat, and it's going to help you serve the Eibishter. So you're raising it up from chai, from an animal to a person, and then the person, through his avodas Hashem, is going to connect it with the Eibishter. And the Rebbe has a number of sichos where the Rebbe discusses shchita. There's a whole sikh on the sichos. Pashas Re'eh, shchita is only hinted in Pashas Re'eh, kasher sivi sicha. All the halachas of shchita are teresh balpeh. It just says in the Torah, you should shecht like I told you. But what I told you was it's all Baal Peh, it's all Mipi Yashmo, it's all Mesoyer, all the halachas of Shechita, all the treifis and everything about Shechita, where you're supposed to shecht and how you're supposed to shecht, and drasa and chalada and whatever it is, all the different Shechitas, treifis. It's all halacha l'meish misina. So the Rebbe says Shechita means to raise up. In the midbar,
What is it about?
just bring him to me. In the midbar, you listening to me? In the midbar, you were only allowed a shech if you brought a carbon. Thank you. You were only allowed a shech, you were only allowed a shech if you brought a carbon. What if you wanted to eat meat and it wasn't going to be a carbon? So then you had to kill it by ripping out its throat. No, but you could eat meat in the midbar. You were allowed to eat meat in the midbar. But it had to be not kosher, to be treif. So it was allowed. If it was allowed, it wasn't treif, yeah? But there was no shechita in the midbar except for a carbon. Why? Because shechita means to lift up. We eat basar taiva, we eat meat in our own home, but we eat it shechted, it was shechted properly. Shechita means to lift up. So each time a human being, a yid, eats meat, he's raising it up from a lower madreg to a higher madreg. In the midbar, you couldn't lift it up. So you can eat the meat, the Eibush is okay, but kosher it wasn't. Shechita, the idea that when you're eating meat, you're raising it up from the animal level to the human level, this was only possible if it was a korban. So the Rebbe said that's the pshat in the story. Rabbi Taka killed Rabbi Zayda. Rabbi Zayda died, but he didn't kill him with a knife. He killed him with wine. He lifted him up. So the Rebbe then connected it to the story of Nadav and Avihu, that they drank Seidus HaTorah, they went into the secrets of the Torah, and it caused the neshama to leave the guf because what they were doing was so exalted, was so lofty, was so high, it was so mystical, it was so holy. And the Rebbe gave different stories. One of the stories he told was that the Alter Rebbe and Avram the Malach decided that they want to do the avodah of Kalais HaNefesh. They're going to do the meditation, which causes the neshama to leave the guf, but they have to remember that they should stay here. In other words, they're going to go into the space, they're going to do the avodah of leaving the guf, but they're going to remind each other that after the Ratzah has to be a shuv, like in the Gemara about Abakiva, Nichnas b'shalom v'yatza b'shom. And when the story was over, I think the Malach found the Alter Rebbe eating a bagel with butter. And the Rebbe's bagel butter means it has to be fat, a whole hezbollah. I think it was the Alter Rebbe eating the bagel butter. I could be wrong about that detail, because he had to bring his neshama back into the guf. He has to bring his neshama back into the guf. And while I'm telling you Lashon Hara, I'll tell you Amoid in the Kazakh. I grew up in Crown Heights, and there were like hundreds of Fabrengens. And like many Bochrim of my generation, we would stand and stare at the Rebbe. That's what I did. I would stare at the Rebbe. So the Rebbe had an interesting Seder. There was a big, beautiful pile of cake in front of him. And the Rebbe would walk in Shabbos. The first thing he would do is he would take his becher and we'd wipe it out with a napkin. And Rabbi Mentlik gave the Rebbe a little medicine bottle. That little medicine bottle had Kesha Bracha in it. Must be from the Yom Tov before. And the Rebbe would empty the contents of the metal bottle into the becher and he would shake it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Api halacha. The residue in a cup after 3 drips is no longer of any mamashah. He'd put the bottle down. Rabbi Mentlik would take the Rebbe's becher and the bottle cap, which he put in his pocket, and he gave Bel the eunuch. And they would fill the Rebbe's becher slowly, kima. So the wine that he was adding was less than the Kesha Bracha, which is in the bottom of the becher. And then he would very respectfully, incredibly respectfully, slide it over to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is reading the Nusach of Kiddush from the Siddur. Before the Rebbe started, there was no Kiddush, the Rebbe would they had these very fancy napkins and a napkin holder. In the later years, when the Rebbe's hand shook, they would lay it down. Because I remember every time the Rebbe touched a napkin, the napkin holder would fall over. The Rebbe's hand at the end shook very bad. So they would lay it down. But Azay, it was standing up, you could see it. He'd pull out a napkin, he would fold it, and he made like a pocket. Then he would take from the big pile of cake 3 or 4 pieces and put it into that napkin, and that's all he ate, the whole Fabrengen. And our mentor would slide over the wine, and it's quiet. It's quiet, how the Seder was. And then I would make Kiddush quietly. Then I would get out of his seat. The Rebbe didn't stand up. He'd raise himself a little from his seat. He'd make Kiddush, and he would drink the wine. And then he would start eating the cake. As soon as the Rebbe finished the wine, the Rebbe would give a small nod. Rabbi Yael stood to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is sitting here. Rabbi Yael was right here underneath. And Rabbi Yael would start the niggin. In all the years, the niggin, the first niggin of each Fabrengen was the niggin of the Rebbe's birthday, of the Rebbe's, for that kapitel. And then after the Rebbe started speaking so much about Mashiach, so the first niggin was about Mashiach, and the second niggin would be the Rebbe's niggin. And the Rebbe would eat cake. Now the Rebbe didn't have a tooth in his mouth, nishka eine. When the Rebbe ate, you saw that it was hard for him. So the Rebbe ate, but he had a big sheet, he had a lot of cake, probably 2 ounces, he had a lot of cake, and he would put pretty big pieces into his mouth. I mean, the Rebbe is a halacha Jew. You follow halacha. Eating pieces which are too small is considered a baltai. Eating pieces which are too big is considered a glut. The Rebbe would eat cake. You could learn from every action of the Rebbe, halacha minig. They would put pretty large pieces. They were less than a kabeya, but not, if they're too small, it's not respectful. If it's more than an egg, it's not respectful. You could learn from the Rebbe's anhaga how the Rebbe would sip wine, you could learn. The Rebbe didn't sip slowly, 2 or 3, he didn't finish the becher in 1 drink, 2 or 3. Like it says in halacha, you could, from every hanhaga of the Rebbe, you could learn. We would watch the Rebbe, and there were pretty big pieces, and he would eat cake. His mouth was closed when he was wiping his lips, but he would already start answering l'chaim. But as long as he was eating cake, he would just nod. He wouldn't actually say l'chaim with the bracha. The rest of the Fabrengen, the Rebbe didn't touch the cake. Didn't touch it. But he would drink wine. He would say l'chaim, they would add more. At the very end of the Fabrengen, before the Rebbe benched, the Rebbe ate another shear, also a large shear, a lot of cake. And then the Rebbe said, al gefen, at the end of the Fabrengen. The Fabrengen could be 4 hours. The Rebbe didn't touch the cake. Didn't touch it. But every Shabbos, the Rebbe said a maimer. But in my years, my morim were ke'ein sicha. The Rebbe said a maimer like a sicha. So if you were watching closely, you would see that usually after 2 sichas, usually the maimer was the 3rd talk, but sometimes it was the 4th. You would watch the Rebbe lean over, he would lean forward, you could see it on the videos, and he'd put his hand in his pocket, and he pulled out a kerchief, then he would lean back, and then he would lean forward a second time. You would watch him do this. He would lean forward, and I'm standing over there, and I'm watching. He would lean forward, he'd put his hand into his pocket, my brother and I once climbed, we were children, mamish under the Rebbe's feet. We came out like chimney sweeps, we were filthy. But we watched the Rebbe say a maimer with the kerchief around his fingers, and under the table, the Rebbe's hands were shaking like this. The Rebbe sits by Fabrengen, he seems so still. His hands and his feet are working like you have no idea. The Rebbe's goof, where you see the Rebbe looks so calm, but on the table, the hands and the feet are shaking vigorously the whole time. Under the table, the Rebbe has a whole conversation going on. And when we saw the kerchief on the Rebbe's fingers. We were children. We did this. I remember it. Anyway, the Rebbe would lean forward a second time and put the kerchief on his fingers. And whenever the Rebbe was going to say a maimah, you could tell. Because we're singing a nigun. And the Rebbe Pashut would go into trances. We're singing. And I would stare off of this. Maybe for 10 seconds. Like, wake up. A few malachayim and weiter. This was every time. When the Rebbe said a maimah, the song before the maimah, you watched the Rebbe go, I don't know where he was going. But the Rebbe Pashut go into trances. You would watch. They're like, wake up, l'chaim, and weiter. And then the maimah would start. The maimah was without a song, so we were not standing up. We were still sitting. The oilam was in the regular places. But the maimah would start with a pasuk. You knew it was a maimah. It was called maimah ke'ein sicha, because the Rebbe said it in the nigun of a sicha. It was easier for people. People didn't have to stand up. And also, when the Rebbe said a maimah with a nigun, he would close his eyes and lower his head. So it was hard to hear him. But when he said a sicha, his eyes were open, and he was sitting up. It was easier to hear him. And the Rebbe finished the maimah. When the Rebbe finished the maimah, there was a regular seder every week. As soon as the maimah was finished, they would lean forward, the kerchief came off his fingers, and he would wipe his eyes every time, like as if he was crying. After each maimah, the Rebbe would wipe tears from his eyes. The maimah didn't look so emotional, but the Rebbe would take his eyes. Then, they would open up the napkin. He would break off a piece of cake, of a mamash, a crumb. Less than a square centimeter. 3 millimeters by 3 millimeters, a tiny piece of cake. You'd break it off, and you would watch him break it, and put it in his mouth. Every midday, shavua b'shavua. I'm sure the week that Fabrengen, you could see it also. I was a bacher, and I almost felt that it was teaching me a lesson. I'm sure he wasn't doing it for me. But the Rebbe broke the cake, picked it up, and put it down. This week, no cake. And when I think about the story, 40 years after it happened, it was like the Rebbe doing his kafia. And he answered a few more people l'chaim, and all of a sudden the Rebbe turned back to the cake, took one piece, and took a second piece. Boom. He delayed the cake, now he needed two. I watched it happen with my eyes. I don't care if anybody denies it. Every Shabbos, the Rebbe after the maimah would take the kerchief off and eat a brekel. Like the story with Alter Rebbe with the bagel. And one Shabbos, I watched the Rebbe do it. I don't know the kavanah, but I'm imagining the kavanah. The Rebbe picked up, he would break it, a small piece. You would watch him break it and put it in his mouth. He picked it up and he put it down. He didn't eat it. He entered l'chaim to a few more pieces, and then he needed 2 pieces. 1, 2. That's the story. Anyway, so this is we understand what the Rebbe says, Chassidus, what it means. We have no idea what we're looking at. We're not even like the chicken reading the kaporas, the 100 and the Yadam, like the story goes. A kid said, so Rabbi and Abzeda got together and Purim. And they drank lots of wine, there's no question about it. But like the biggest tzaddikim, when they drink wine, it brings out seidus. The word yayin is begematria 70. Yud nun is 70. Seid is also 70. Nichnas yayin yotzo say. The wine goes in, the secret comes out. It's inverse, you know. Wine is a secret. Why? It's mifkat pkidi. According to halacha, wine is not grape juice. Wine is a separate entity that the Eibishter put inside grapes. Al pi halacha it's that way. That's what did the bracha. The grape is Be'er Priya Eitz, and the wine is Be'er Priya Geffen. Hashem hid inside grapes wine. So apple juice is the juice of an apple. Orange juice is the juice of an orange. Wine is not the juice of a grape.
Bracha changes for those two.
No, it doesn't.
Grape juice is a gafen, it's not wine. Apple juice is shahak.
Okay, but that's a lesser bracha. It's not a greater bracha. It's a smaller bracha. It's not a bigger bracha. Right. Grape, Abi Alocha, the Eibishter put wine in grapes. No, the Eibishter made a phenomenon called wine, and of course the same applies to oil. The Eibishter created oil, the Eibishter put in wine, but he hid them inside a fruit. Why did he hide inside a fruit? Because their inyan is secret. Shemen is called Rozan, Dirazan, the secrets of the secrets, and Yain is called Rozan, secrets. So the Eibishter hid the wine inside the grape. You take the wine outside the grape, and when you imbibe, when you drink that wine, it reveals your secrets. Now, if you're a fed and a chamor and a shoyer and a kelev and a chveis nitvos, When you drink wine, all that secret's going to come out. But if you're a Rebbe, which means a great Rebbe, and Reb Zayda, a smaller Rebbe, and you drink wine, what's going to happen? The Seder Satera are going to come out. So they studied Seder Satera, and they studied Seder Satera. Rebbe was bigger than Reb Zayda. Rebbe means the great Rebbe. The word Zayda means small. And Rebbe's Seder Satera was so powerful that it caused by Reb Zayda, Kalei Sanef. I don't know if you guys know this, in the Zohar there's a section called Idra. Idra Rabba and Idra Zut. In Idra Rabba, Rabbi Shimon Chai said Teira to a minion of Chevra, and as he was speaking, 3 of them experienced Kalei Sanef. The Neshama left, the Guf went back, Lamai, they died. And then my Morim say, but that was not the Aved of Nadav and Avihu. Because Nadav and Avihu died before their time by studying Seder Satera. They knew it was their time, so they allowed the Neshama to be Eila Besara Hashamayim to the Seder Shemechai. Then they did it years later again. And the second time they did it, Rashbi himself, he said Torah, and the Shama went out of his goof. It's called Kalei Sanefesh. Believe me, it's not happening to you. Don't worry. You can eat all the bagels you want. It's not going to happen to you. Or you could not eat all the bagels you want. But for tzaddikim and this madrega, it's a real Inyan. So Rabbi and Reb Zayda studied Pnimis HaTeira, and Rabbi raised Reb Zayda to a higher madrega. Reb Zayda's neshama left the goof, and he passed away. So the next day, Rabbi brings him back from the dead and says, let's do it again. Rabbi says, no. I don't know if the miracle is going to happen. Just like by the Sedes HaDibris, the Yidden kept on dying. And Moshe said, small price to pay. You get to become a Navi Davish, you're worried about death. And he said, we want to live. So he could have said, well, I'll bring you back. Davish will bring you back. He said, how do you know? Maybe this time not. Maybe this time not. So this is the story. That Yidden were not zeicher to get their das neighbors directly. You have to put your yamak on your head to have a headache. Hello? What are you looking over there? Look over here. Yeah. Aminut. They got the nevuah from the Eibishter himself. But were not able to get the nevuah from the Eibishter himself. They got it from Moshe Rabbeinu. 22:22 explain how the fear of the Jewish people and the fear of Reb Zayda are comparable. Yeah? That Reb Zayda, Rabbi brought him back from the dead. The Eibishter brought Yidden back from the dead by a Sedes HaDibris. So what are they afraid of? So Reb Zayda says, maybe tomorrow he won't. It's not the pshat the Eibishter is going to make a mistake. I told you the story about this Yid. I told you the story yesterday about a Yid who was killed in a war. And this Yid was ma'oder a whole bunch of soldiers to Mesiras Nefesh HaKiddush Hashem, and he was the one who lost his life. So this Levi guy in Yechidus asked the Rebbe, he was the one who rallied all of us, why did he die? And the Rebbe told him these words, that when he rallied you for Mesiras Nefesh HaKiddush Hashem, he woke up his own Yechidus Sheba Nefesh, he aroused in himself the inyan of Mesiras Nefesh. Does anybody know Mesiras Nefesh's last name? Does anybody know Mesiras Nefesh's last name? Every Jew has to know it. Huh? What's Mesiras Nefesh's last name? Do not forget this. Mesiras Nefesh's last name is Al Kiddush Hashem. Al Kiddush Hashem. We're dying to sanctify the name of God, not to go to where the Muslims go, Yamach Al Kiddush Hashem, to Mekadesh Shem Shemayim Barabim. So the Rebbe said to this Levi, who survived without his left hand, so he couldn't put on film, and he swore that if he would survive, he would wear film. He said, I promised the Eibush I put on film, and I don't have an arm. So the Rebbe said to him, the Eibush wants you to know that he doesn't love you because of the mitzvahs. But he asked the Rebbe, why did that Frum soldier, who rallied that whole group, that whole company, that whole group of soldiers who had to fight with the entire Egyptian army in the Sinai in 73 in the Yom Kippur War, why did he die? And the Rebbe said, because he rallied you for Mesiras Nefesh, he revealed his Chiddush Nefesh, and the Rebbe said these words. The Eibishter decided to take his korban. The Eibishter decided to take his Narchevet. There's no nice way to swallow those words. It's not kind. It's true. It's poignant beyond poignant. But the Rebbe said to this Levi, the Eibishter decided, when Jem gave out that video, you could see that they clipped it. They took it out. You could see Levi is telling the story. Jem has what's called Faithful and Fortified. They have 4 videos called Faithful and Fortified. 4 CDs. CDs, may they rest in peace. Aleichem Shalom. You know, they're on top of the the 8-track and the cassettes, the CDs. But we used to have CDs, and they gave us 4 CDs called Faithful and Fortified. One of them was about soul military. And you have this meeting with this Levi, came to see the Rebbe in the 70s, in the mid-70s, and he had this conversation with the Rebbe. So Rabbi Zera is thinking, what if tomorrow the Eibusher wants to take my carbon? The Yidden after says a dibber say to Moshe Rabbeinu, what if tomorrow the Eibusher took my carbon? I want to live. So B'meila, as a result of all of this, Moshe Rabbeinu became the provider of das.